Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So today is a very damn interesting one. Patch 8.1 has been uploaded to the PTR, which means that data mining is in. And yeah, there are some really big surprises. Now, if you're wondering why this is the budget edition of my YouTube channel, well, I'm currently traveling, I'm at EGX. The reason why is we are doing work with our game. So you can find us, you can find our game at the Transfuser stand. So go there, check us out, check out the other teams, and yeah, support indie game development and come say hello. So that's the Transfuser stand at EGX today and tomorrow. So with that, let's hop into the dead interesting stuff of this patch. Okay, so the thing that we've got to start off with is Death and Vol'jin, because it's extremely interesting. It's probably why most of you are here, but if you're not here for that, then check out the description. There will be a time code to skip things. Okay, so in patch 8.0, we went on a quest about the Urn of Vol'jin, and where that pretty much ended, Bumsamdi could not find Vol'jin's spirit, and yeah, that's essentially what was going on. Bumsamdi mentioned that his boss wouldn't be happy, and yeah, that's kind of how we were dealing with that. Now, this is advanced in patch 8.1, and one of the most interesting things is a scenario with the Lich King and Bumsamdi, which is pretty crazy. Now, initially, it kind of seemed to me like the Horde were driven away from the Lich King, but the Alliance were perhaps driven towards him. Now, that could kind of happen, but now that more of the data mining has came out, we have the broader context of this, and it's still really interesting. So, Vol'jin, when he was dying, said that Sylvanas should be War Chief, and that many wouldn't understand. He was right. Many of us didn't understand. It seemed completely silly, to be completely honest with you. So that has sort of been explored a little bit more. Now, in typical fashion, of course, they don't want to give us any answers that are firm to these questions. But what happens is that you and Tyrande go on a bit of an expedition to various death-related people to try to work out just what the hell is going on with Vol'jin, because he's back. And he's back and he seems to be particularly powerful, or at least changed or different, and nobody can quite understand why he thought Sylvanas was a good idea, especially given all the stuff that's recently happened. So in this questline, we basically go and we talk to the Lich King, we talk to Aer, and then we also talk to Bumsamdi to get their take on things. Now, here's what's interesting. Everyone agrees that Sylvanas is really bad, so all of the people relating to death do not want Sylvanas. A large part of the reason why is because she pretty much tips the balance of things. Whenever she kills someone, of course their, spirit or whatever doesn't go to Aer or to the Lich King or to Bumsamdi. No, Sylvanas traps it in its body and does the whole undead thing, which kind of messes up the plans of the, various people who kind of run death behind the scenes. So really none of them seem to like her for that reason. And I guess that's kind of interesting, because if we think about Vol'jin, then we naturally wonder why. So Tyrande confronts Vol'jin in this, and Vol'jin essentially says that at the time where he was dying, he felt cut off from the Loa, and he doesn't really know who gave him that whisper. He does not have an identity. It's all implied to be very dark and spooky. We know that it's very likely not the Loa. He says that he was cut off from the Loa. We know that Lich King had nothing to do with it. Aer had nothing to do with it. So it's hard to say. Now, there is technically one other odd thing that everyone's trying to work out, and that is, why is Vol'jin back, and why is he seemingly quite powerful? Now, that is another weird thing, because when we go to Lich King, Aer, etc., they all still say, yep, we don't know what is behind any of this, but, Sylvanas tips the balance. Now, as to the identity of that, well, Vol'jin does mention a kind of big shadowy spirit. My thoughts instantly, of course, go to Muzala. Of course, we covered Muzala recently on the channel, so, big, spooky, undeath guy, another sort of Loa, which technically would conflict with one statement here, but he could be like a deeper force of death, working in the Shadowlands. Of course, there's a little bit that, where we could think that he is the person who currently has Odin's other eye. That very much is speculation, though, but essentially what we know is that Vol'jin's back, he's quite powerful, something external, some sort of external force has made him that way. We don't know what that is. We don't know what that serves. We don't know if that's good for us or bad for us. We know that Bomsamdi did not whisper into Vol'jin's ear to make him choose Sylvanas. We know that the Lich King didn't. We know that Aegir didn't. Now, that really is getting confusing. Like, who do we have left in terms of the forces of death? Is it Helya who did that? I'm not 100% sure. Helya did go on to make a bargain with Sylvanas, but I just don't know if it was her that would have done all of that whispering. And really, if I think about Blizzard and I think about their long-term challenge, which is how do we keep World of Warcraft going with compelling villains for people, well, I'm pretty sure that they're using this to establish some sort of force of death that is different to what we currently know. I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing. It makes a lot of sense because, you're running an MMO. You want an endless supply of villains, so I'd say that's likely what they're doing, and that the various different forces of death will somehow be involved. Now, the other thing I do want to talk about is Alliance and Horde in this context, because, well, Aegir pretty much tells you to leave and never come back. So with the Lich King, he pretty much commands you to either leave now or stay forever, and that ties into a scenario. Now, in that scenario, it's pretty simple. It's just 4 parts. You go there, you confront the Lich King, and then something seems to maybe go wrong, and then Bomsamdi kind of saves you with a death gate. Now, that's pretty odd because if we think about the Lich King, well, it's kind of interesting. So we just had a situation here where the Horde had a bit of an interaction with him that maybe did not go completely to plan. Now, if we look at the Alliance side of things, well, you've got Kalia, so Arthas' sister. She's now involved in the story. You've got Talia, I think. You've got her, who is Bolvar's daughter. Of course, Bolvar is the current Lich King. So you could sort of think that there are a few data points that tie the Alliance closer to the Lich King in the modern storyline, and now a few data points that perhaps drive the Horde a little bit further away from the Lich King. Now, that's all interesting because there is a updated model for a Skeleton Warrior here. Now, earlier on in Battle for Azeroth, in like the initial launch of the expansion, that did include a whole bunch of new models for like ghouls and undeads. That means that if they ever were to do a large modern army of Scourge, they actually do have high quality art assets that could be used to do that, which I'd say is very interesting food for thought. So, there we go, some interesting stuff with the Lich King, and a lot of mystery with Vol'jin. Now, given all of the stuff that's going on, what whispered to him and what has made him really powerful, they seem to be different things. The powerful thing, I think that's something to do with just some other force we don't really know about right now. As for the whispers, it's seemingly implied that is maybe like sort of old godlike. Now, if that is the case, I would find that to be a little bit less interesting. But of course, if you are N'Zoth and you want some chaos, it seems like having Sylvanas be on the Warchief throne, well, it seems like that's pretty ideal given how she has behaved over the last while. So there you go, that is just extremely interesting story. I cannot wait to see where it all goes. But yeah, right now, stuff's incomplete. This is data mining and some chat about it. We will have to wait and see to get the full picture. Next up, we've got to talk about Tyrande and Emo Tyrande, which is kind of interesting for the lore, and of course, it also brings an interesting game feature. So, Blizzard are adding a new customization option for the Night Elves with this, like, black face paint. It's really cool, really mournful, kind of emo looking, I suppose, if we're to be coy about it. Now, it is unlocked through a questline with Tyrande, and in that questline she undergoes a transformation, performing the ritual of the Night Warrior and becoming the Night Warrior, which, to be honest, is a really cringy name, a little bit embarrassing, but I think that it could mean that we're getting a more powerful and more vengeful Tyrande. Now, I think that, people who only have played World of Warcraft recently, they'll be confused about Tyrande's popularity. She's been very strange in Warcraft recently, but the people that like her character probably do because of Warcraft 3, where she was portrayed very differently. She was a lot more powerful. The Night Elves were a lot more brutal back then as opposed to their current ways in WoW. Well, having them react to the burning of Teldrassil by kind of going back to their Warcraft 3 roots, I think that would allow them to have a far more active role in the story, and I think players would find that a lot more interesting than their current sort of nature. Now, before we get into the next point, of course, Battle for Azeroth, it's an expansion about the faction conflict. I mean, Old God stuff, that's absurd. It's about the faction conflict, which is why Unat, Harbinger of the Void, has been datamined, and he seems to be the second and final boss of the new Shrine of Storms raid that's going to be releasing sometime after the Siege of Zuldazar. Now, Harbinger of the Void, you know what, that's not really a subtle name, for sure. Now, there are various, hints out there. At some point, it's kind of hinted that there'll be a tremendous naval clash between the forces of the Alliance and the Horde, and that this is pretty much when the Old God plan will spring, likely with both sides being savaged by the Naga, of course, right on top of Nazjatar. Now, I suspect that the Shrine raid will be heavily hinting at this, and if you look at this guy's name, it's obviously a Faceless or a Cathaxi, something like that. Now, there is another Naga boss model in the data mining, so we pretty much know, like, Ashara's not going to feature in the Shrine of Storms raid. Now that, she was kind of referred to as the Gul'dan of BFA. Now, if that was in the Legion sense, it would have meant she would have been killed off early on. Most of us thought that would have been a waste. It doesn't seem like that was Blizzard's plan anyway. She's probably going to be a far more of a major character, and I think that's great. To be honest, I would not be surprised if she ends up double-crossing N'Zoth, or if there's some just internal conflict within the Void Alliance forces, basically based out of her individuality, which would make her a more interesting character than just being a mindless servant to a big, angry tentacle. And then next, the final lore thing that I want to talk about is Ashvane, because it seems like the Horde will be breaking her out of jail in their war campaign, or at least that's what this scenario suggests. Now, Ashvane is pretty much allied with Ashara, so it's pretty darn self-sabotaging of the Horde to do that, and I suspect that's kind of the theme that they're going for. The Alliance and the Horde weakening the overall forces of Azeroth greatly in their short-sighted attempts at, getting at each other, and at some point the battle for Azeroth is going to flip from factions to life versus death or versus void or something like that, and I've got to wonder if when that happens, a lot of the beef is squashed between the Alliance and the Horde, and perhaps we see a large shift in their role in World of Warcraft as time goes on. Okay, with that covered, let's talk about some visuals that have been data mined. So first, we did see the new Night Elf customization, which is really cool. Now, of course, Blood Elves and Dwarves, they're also getting new stuff. They're getting the Heritage armor in this patch, with the Blood Elves seemingly reliving the events of the Scourge invasion, and then the Dwarves seemingly exploring Ulduar. Both are great opportunities to show off the lore, and I'm extra keen to see if they sneak in anything interesting from the data vaults of Ulduar when we do that questline. Now, next, the allied races stuff has been kind of updated, so with the Kaltirian human druid, their Moonkin and travel forms are there. The Moonkin one is pretty out there. Can't say that I love it, it's kind of grotesque, but hey, the more the merrier. And then the water travel forms also pretty damn great. And I've got to hand it to Blizzard, you know what, the Kaltirian druids, they really do feel different, and the same goes for the Xantalari. Now, this is not going to be available in 8.1, maybe it's something for 8.1.5. Now, in other Kaltirian news, we have what is probably their allied race mount. It's another horse, of course, but I mean, hey, look at it. It's a pretty wonderful horse, just like Anduin's is big and armored. Now, the lack of variety is still kind of unfortunate, but you know what? As far as horses go, it's a pretty damn good horse. Now, on the topic of mounts, well, the Hive Mind is back with a new model. Chances are this will be a part of the Battle for Azeroth secret search, which, like with Legion's one, is just a great effort from the team. It feels genuinely special, even if you're not working on a secret. It's a really cool, community storyline that kind of brings everyone together. But also on the topic of mounts, and, well, come on. It's a World of Warcraft news video. There's got to be a drama to talk about. So, Blizzard did a mount promo. Basically, if you buy 6 months, you will get a mount bundled in, and that mount eventually will be on the in-game store. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is Blizzard just reacting to BFA subs. Look, stuff like this in companies, it is in the can for months. It is planned months in advance. There is no way that they pop this thing out in next to zero time. I think that would be extremely, extremely unlikely. And yeah, there's a fair bit of conspiracy sort of level stuff going on in terms of the discussion about that. But what I think is absolutely true is that they're really bad optics from Blizzard. And I think that if more leadership, to be honest with you, was shown on their side, they probably should have pulled the plug on this, given the current community thoughts. I think, it's not that that's a good gesture or a bad gesture, it's just that it's a pragmatic way of managing community perception, which is something unfortunately, you have to do. Overall, though, I've got to imagine that someone at Blizzard considered pulling the plug in this, or just remembered how it is kind of a bad look. I mean, come on, just remember Warlords of Paymore, right, where Warlords of Draenor was just full of boars and everything interesting was a store mount. They obviously don't want that to happen. That was really damaging. So yeah, I'm a tiny bit worried, I suppose. I don't think it's that major right now, but all I would say is Blizzard, come on, you can easily anticipate how people react to things, and if you understand that, then you can make some pragmatic decisions about managing community perception, because ultimately that kind of is worth more than a quick buck. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Is it as bad as people say? No, but should we sort of pay attention to it from a pragmatic community management perspective? I think yes. And there we have it, a pretty damn good bit of news, I think. Really interesting stuff, and I guess Blizzard going into those areas with the lore, that's genuinely really cool to me, so I'm dead excited to see what they've got. Anyway, thank you for, gritting your teeth through this not particularly well-produced video, but hopefully the information, all that stuff was fun. So, thank you for checking in, and I will see you next time.